Joining us now on Eyewitness News Conference, Sandra Feldman. She is president of the United Federation of Teachers. Thank you for joining us. Of course, the big issue for teachers right now is their contract, and they don't have one. They are starting the school year without a contract.
Well, we're starting the second school year without a contract, which is totally unprecedented for us in New York City.
You're getting ready to protest.
We plan to be protesting until there is a contract. What's happening here is totally unconscionable as far as we're concerned. We know that we're in a tough economy. We're responsible, experienced negotiators, and we know that a contract is doable. The city does have money. It doesn't have a lot of money, but it is spending money on some things and not on others. It's making choices. It's making decisions.
What do teachers want?
Well, we want salaries that are competitive with the surrounding districts, because we've got a situation in New York City where we have close to 7,000, about 6,500 teachers who don't meet state certification. Some of them will ultimately be very good teachers, but no other district in the surrounding area has to recruit teachers who don't meet state certification. The conditions are very difficult. The class sizes are too large. Teachers have to reach into their own pockets to buy supplies, and then they don't even get the dignity and respect and recognition of having a contract negotiated. They have to live with that uncertainty. We plan to be protesting in a wide variety of ways until there is a contract, and I'm hoping that the city doesn't procrastinate to the point where it provokes some more serious action than that. You know, in Newark, New Jersey is hardly a rich city. In many ways, it has less of an economic foundation than New York City has. They have a contract with their teachers. Their teachers make more than teachers in New York City earn.
I have to go back. You touch on more serious action. What would that action be?
Well, we're trying very hard to avoid a strike, to avoid a disruption of education. We don't want it. But we are in a situation where, after a year of fruitless bargaining, we're now in mediation. We will probably have to go to fact-finding. There will be a fact-finder's report. We don't know what will happen as a result of that, whether it will get accepted or rejected by one side or the other, because it's not a binding process. And we want a negotiated settlement. We could end up in a very serious situation.
But
here
is there
in
a
New York
deadline
City.
for this? I mean, this has been going on for a long time.
Well, I mean,
where do you draw the line?
You draw the line at the point where you see absolutely no hope.
Let me ask you this. The Dingens administration has made it very clear their stand has been the same, as far as I know, for the past year, which is that they will grant you a raise of varying sizes, I assume, but it has to be financed completely by concessions from the union. Not just your union, but all the unions. It's a standard position. In the year that you have been talking to the Dingens administration, have they backed off from that position at all?
They have not. That's still their position, and it's a ludicrous position. You know what it really means? It means that you have to take teachers who are working under the most adverse conditions in the state, with class sizes that are 10 to 12 children higher in number than class sizes are anywhere else in the state, and do things like raise class size. Where does money come from when they say you have to finance your own raises? It means you have to have fewer teachers in order to have some money. That's what it means. I mean, that's the kind of thing that they're talking about. Raise class size, and the money that you save you can put into raises. We don't want raises on the backs of kids that way.
What about working a longer day?
Working a longer day has to be paid for. You know, the surrounding.
No, I think the point of their negotiation is that it doesn't have to be paid for.
Well,
that would be something you give back.
We're not going to go along with that. Why should we do that? If Newark teachers make more money than teachers in New York City, if teachers in Jersey City make more money than teachers in New York City, teachers in Hempstead and Yonkers and all sorts of districts that are in just as much or more trouble financially as New York City is, but they put a premium on their kids, and they put a premium on education. You can't deliver education to kids without good teachers in the classroom, and this city is going to lose a large number of teachers over the next few years, and there is no indication that we have recruitment power right now in New York City. We have close to 7,000 teachers who do not meet state certification. I also think we have one of the best teaching staffs in the United States. The teachers are doing heroic work. They are the heroes and heroines of the school system.
Well,
they are keeping it together on sheer grit.
It sounds to me as though you and the Dingens administration, not you individually, the union and the Dingens administration, aren't really talking to each other. Because from all I've been able to determine, their position is fairly constant, and your position is constant. it doesn't sound like there's much room for movement here.
No, well, that's why we've declared an impasse. And we have the Public Employment Relations Board in here. There's a mediator. We said we're at impasse. We have no movement at all in the talks, and I think that's very serious. I think it's a failure of the administration.
In this period of time, given the history of labor management relations, and that includes government, perhaps vividly government, in the last 10 years, is there anything to be gained by the teachers' union by going on strike?
We don't want to strike.
I didn't say you did. I said, is there anything to be gained by going on strike?
It depends. I mean, how long are teachers going to go without being respected in this city by this administration? It's pretty shocking to us that we're going into a second school year. And look, I mean, we're trying to avoid a strike. It's quite provocative, though, for the city to maintain for over a year the position that there isn't going to be a cent of new money on the table for raises for teachers when our teachers are falling further and further behind. And I'm not even comparing us to Scarsdale or Great Neck. I'm talking about Jersey City. I'm talking about Hempstead. I'm talking about Mount Vernon. I'm talking about Yonkers.
But what you describe as unreasonable, I'm sure they would describe as unreasonable that you haven't offered them concessions.
We're prepared to sit at the table and bargain about school improvements and ways in which incentives can be offered to teachers to do different kinds of programs with kids. We've made proposals that we think would create productivity, educational productivity in the school system. But we're not going to agree to larger class sizes or the teachers working a longer day without being paid for it when teachers are making up to 25% more in the surrounding districts and we're operating under the most difficult and dangerous conditions in the state. And I think that it's an awful thing that's being said about our kids. Our kids are great. We have smart, resilient, hard-working kids in the New York City school system. 1 million school children who come to school with tremendous problems. And what is education about? It's about what happens between them and the educators who work with them. And for those educators not to be given the respect and recognition that they get elsewhere, right across the river or in the surrounding suburbs, because New York City says it doesn't have money. Come on. New York City has money, but it's putting it in places other than education. And I think it says something about whether there's a commitment to kids here.
Let's talk about another issue right now, school safety. We were talking with Chancellor Fernandez about that. Do you feel that the schools are safer this year?
Well, it remains to be seen. I think that tremendous efforts are being made to make the schools safer because we've had a terrible spillover of violence. And, you know, part of what happened in the schools last year is that the budget cuts created situations where you have large schools with 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 children in them that suffered as much as a 10% cut in staff in terms of the adults, teachers, paraprofessionals, and others in that school building. When you've got a school that's got 3,000 or 4,000 kids in it and you cut out 10% of the adults in that building, you're going to create an unsafe situation, making it much more difficult for that school to function. And we're very much in favor of smaller schools, and we've been working with the Chancellor and his staff on trying to make the schools smaller, but you have to have appropriate support services for kids. You need counselors. You need more teachers, not fewer teachers. And you do need the metal detectors, and you've got to have the kinds of things that the Chancellor was talking about in terms of violent kids who carry weapons not being allowed into the regular school setting. It's not good for them. They end up in jail or dead. And it certainly does prevent other kids from getting a good education. Those are the kinds of things that need to be done, which we've been pushing very hard for. And I believe that we're beginning to make some progress there. I hope we are.
So it sounds like you would support the Chancellor's alternative schools program.
Yes, we do. Definitely. And I think that the criticism is terribly unfair and unrealistic. We know what happens to our kids when they get into trouble, when they get into street violence, when they get into a peer culture of violence and they're carrying weapons. They end up getting badly hurt. They end up doing jail time. That's what the alternative is to a small setting where they're going to get the kind of attention that they need and which will take them out of a regular school setting where they're disrupting the education of other kids and when they're not getting their needs met. So we think it's a very good idea, these borough academies.
An issue that we talked at great length with the Chancellor about was the AIDS curriculum. How do the teachers feel?
You know, I think that we support the curriculum. The curriculum was developed by the state, by the way. Now, this is a statewide curriculum. This is not a New York City curriculum. There were hearings. There were meetings which teachers attended and parents attended, and I think that the chancellor is correct when he says that the exaggerations, the claims that are being made about what's in this curriculum are just ridiculous. AIDS is a plague that has to be dealt with. Our kids are in terrible danger. Teachers, we believe, need a lot of freedom to do what they feel comfortable with in terms of the curriculum, and the curriculum, as it's written, gives teachers a lot of leeway. Teachers know how much to talk to children about when it comes to a subject like AIDS, especially if they've been given the appropriate training, which of course they need to be given. And I think that we ought to let the schools do their job, and the kind of the attention that's been paid to this issue, the spectacular nature of some of the claims about it are just not fair.
Let me ask you a similar question to the one I asked the chancellor. He having now spent 3 years with David Dinkins, you've spent 3 years with Mayor Dinkins now. What's your review?
I'm disappointed.
How so?
Well, I don't see the kind of support for education that I thought this mayor stood for. We supported him. We were very important in terms of supporting him, and we supported him because we knew a Dave Dinkins who was always on the front lines in the fight for education, for resources for education, supporting kids and teachers. And it's a great disappointment to us that we've had over this past 2 years enormous cuts from the city in the school budget. And this is a school budget which it sounds big because it's such a huge system, but we're terribly underfunded. I mean, we spend half as much per child as some of the surrounding districts spend. The fact that we would go for over a year without being able to bring a contract to a conclusion in an adult cooperative way to try to conciliate this, knowing that there are problems and tough choices that have to be made.
Has he treated the teachers and education more unfavorably than he has other areas of city government?
Well, we believe that education has been disproportionately cut. And, there isn't any other institution that touches the lives of kids the way the schools do. Even kids who have other serious needs, and we support resources for the needs of children, their health needs, but children who live in shelters go to public schools. Children who are in foster care go to public schools. The public schools represent the only vehicle that kids have for hope, for getting into the mainstream of American culture, for finding a way out of poverty, for making it in the United States. We have had 25,000 additional kids coming into our schools each year the past couple of years, while we're operating with 2,500 fewer teachers. The teachers are performing heroically in this school system, and they deserve recognition. It's criminal not to recognize the needs of teachers and kids.
Okay. One final quick question. Does this mean the mayor does not get your support next time around?
We'll decide on who we're going to support in the mayoral election when the mayoral election is upon us. I would say if we were going to make the decision now, it would be different.
Sorry to cut you off. We are out of time. Thank you so much, Sandra Feldman, for joining us. And that does it for this edition of Eyewitness News Conference. Our thanks also to Schools Chancellor Joseph Fernandez, who was with us a little bit earlier, with my colleague, Pat Dawson. And for all of us here at Eyewitness News, I'm Diana Williams. Have a good afternoon.